I'm a 65-year-old man who wears navy blue coveralls with my name stitched on the pocket. Robert. That's what the patch says, and that's what most people in the building call me. Not Mr. Morrison, not sir, just Robert. The guy who fixes leaky faucets, changes light bulbs, and makes sure the heating system doesn't give up during Chicago winters. My truck is a 2003 Ford F-150 with rust creeping along the wheel wells and a dent in the tailgate from when I backed into a dumpster 7 years ago. The radio only works on AM stations, and the passenger seat has a tear in the vinyl that I've been meaning to patch with duct tape for about 3 years now. My son Daniel thinks I'm barely getting by. He thinks his old man is just another working-class guy, counting down the days until Social Security kicks in, living in a modest one-bedroom apartment in Rogers Park, eating chicken noodle soup for dinner most nights, and watching price tags at the grocery store like a hawk. He's not entirely wrong about the soup or the price tags. Old habits die hard, and I actually like chicken noodle soup. But there's a lot my son doesn't know. A lot I've made sure he doesn't know. Daniel is 34 now. He works at a consulting firm downtown, pulls in about $170,000 a year, wears suits that cost more than my monthly rent, allegedly, and married a woman named Victoria, who considers Target beneath her. I paid for Daniel's education at Northwestern. Every penny. Tuition, room, board, books. The study abroad program in London, where he spent more time in pubs than classrooms, but came back with stories that made it sound like he'd been attending lectures at Oxford. I never told him how I managed it. He assumed I'd saved carefully, maybe took out some loans, made sacrifices. He wasn't wrong about the sacrifices, but the financial picture was a bit different than he imagined. The building where I work, where I've worked for the past 18 years, is a 12-story commercial property on West Madison Street. Glass and steel, built in the 80s, renovated in the 2000s. There's a small coffee shop on the ground floor, a dental office on 2, and the rest is office space for various businesses. Marketing agencies, law firms, tech startups that come and go like Chicago weather. I know every pipe, every wire, every quirk of the HVAC system. I know which offices run their space heaters all winter and drive up the electric bill. And I know which tenants are 3 months behind on rent. I know because I look at the books. I look at the books because I own the building. My son doesn't know this. His wife Victoria certainly doesn't know this. They think I'm Robert the maintenance man. Robert who probably makes $35,000-$40,000 a year, if he's lucky. Robert, who should really think about retiring soon before his back gives out or he has a heart attack while hauling a water heater up the stairs. It was a Thursday afternoon in October when Daniel called me. I was in the basement, fighting with a temperamental boiler that kept shutting itself off and making the tenants on the 7th floor complain about cold offices. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I wiped my hands on a rag and answered. "Hey, Dad. Danny. How are you?" "Good, good. Listen, are you free this evening? Victoria and I want to take you to dinner." I glanced at the boiler, which was now humming peacefully, probably just to spite me. "Sure. Where are you thinking?" "There's a place in River North. Italian. Nothing fancy, just, nice." Nothing fancy meant it would have cloth napkins and a wine list with bottles that cost more than my boots. "Sounds good. What time? 7? We'll pick you up. I can drive myself." "Dad, come on. Let us pick you up. It's on the way." It wasn't on the way. River North was nowhere near Rogers Park, and they lived in Lincoln Park. But I agreed because I could tell from his voice that this wasn't just dinner. This was something. They arrived at 6:45 in Daniel's Audi, black and gleaming like a seal. Victoria was in the passenger seat, looking at her phone. She glanced up when I approached, gave me a smile that was more reflex than warmth, and went back to her screen. Daniel got out to greet me. "Hey, Dad." He hugged me briefly, the kind of hug that's more about the gesture than the contact. He was wearing a charcoal suit, no tie, top button undone in that casual but still expensive way young professionals do it. "You look good." I was wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, my compromise between my work clothes and the dress code of wherever we were going. "Thanks. You too." The drive downtown was filled with small talk. Daniel asked about my week. I told him about the boiler and a clogged drain on the fourth floor. Victoria occasionally made listening noises, but never put down her phone. We parked in a garage that charged $30 for 2 hours and walked to the restaurant, which had the kind of understated exterior that signals expense. Small sign, no windows full of neon, just a wooden door with brushed steel handles. Inside, it was dim and warm, with exposed brick walls and tables covered in white cloth. We were seated in a corner booth. A waiter appeared immediately, offering water and menus bound in leather. I opened mine and looked at the prices. Entrees started at $38. This was definitely something. Daniel ordered wine without looking at the price. Victoria asked for a salad that came with ingredients I'd never heard of. I ordered chicken parmesan because it was familiar, and because I wasn't going to pretend to know what a pancetta-wrapped monkfish with saffron emulsion was supposed to taste like. We made it through appetizers before Daniel got to the point. "So, Dad, we wanted to talk to you about something." I set down my fork. "Okay." Victoria put down her phone. This was clearly rehearsed. Daniel cleared his throat. "We've been thinking about your situation." "My situation?" "Your living situation. Your work situation." "Dad, you're 65. You've been working your whole life. Don't you think it's time to slow down? Enjoy retirement?" "I enjoy what I do." "I know, but—" He exchanged a glance with Victoria. She picked up where he left off, her voice smooth and practiced, like she was presenting to a client. "Robert, we're concerned about your future. The building where you work, it's not exactly stable employment. You're getting older, and physically demanding work becomes harder as we age. Daniel and I have been discussing this, and we think it would be wise for you to consider selling your apartment." I blinked. "Selling my apartment? It's a good time," Daniel said. "The market in Rogers Park is actually picking up. You could probably get, what, $200,000 for it? Maybe more. That's money you could use to move into a nice senior community. A place with amenities, where you don't have to worry about maintenance or cooking. Some of them are really nice, Dad. They have activities, social events. You want me to move into a nursing home?" "Not a nursing home," Victoria said quickly. "A senior living community. There's a difference. These are active adult communities. Independent living. I am living independently." "Yes. But for how much longer?" Victoria's voice had that edge of impatience that people get when they think they're being logical and you're being difficult. "What happens if you fall? What happens if you have a medical emergency and no one's around? You live alone, Robert. It's not safe." I looked at my son. He was nodding along with everything Victoria said, his face arranged in an expression of concern that might have been genuine. It was hard to tell. "And the money from the apartment," he continued, "that could go toward the community, sure, but you'd probably have some left over. You could use that for expenses, entertainment, whatever you want. The point is, you'd be secure. You'd be taken care of." "I'm taken care of now." "Dad." Daniel leaned forward. "Let's be honest. How much are you making? 30,000? 40? How much do you have saved?" I didn't answer. I just looked at him, waiting. "We're not trying to insult you," Victoria said. "We're trying to help. You've worked hard your entire life. You've done everything for Daniel. Now it's time to let us help you." The waiter appeared with our entrees. The interruption gave me a moment to think, to process what was actually happening here. This wasn't concern. This was a pitch. And underneath the pitch was something else, something I didn't want to believe but couldn't ignore. They'd thought this through. They'd practiced. They'd probably looked up senior communities and calculated how much money would be left over from the sale of my apartment. Money that they thought I wouldn't need. Money that could, in their minds, be better used elsewhere. Perhaps toward the house they were planning to buy in Evanston. Perhaps toward Victoria's idea of starting her own consulting firm. Perhaps toward the lifestyle they wanted but couldn't quite afford on $170,000 a year, not with student loans and car payments and the pressure to keep up with their friends who worked in finance. "I'm not selling my apartment," I said. Daniel's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "Dad, just think about it." "I don't need to think about it. I'm not selling." "You're being stubborn." "I'm being clear." Victoria set down her wine glass with a little more force than necessary. Robert, you're not thinking this through. What's your plan? Work until you physically can't anymore? And then what? Your apartment is your only asset. If you need medical care, long-term care, that money will disappear in months. This way, you can make it last. You can have quality of life. I have quality of life. Fixing toilets at 65? Victoria's mask of concern was slipping. That's not quality of life. That's barely getting by. Daniel put his hand on Victoria's arm, a gentle warning. She took a breath and reset her expression. We're not trying to upset you, Daniel said. We're trying to be realistic. We want what's best for you. I cut into my chicken parmesan. It was good, probably worth the $42 on the menu. I appreciate your concern, but I'm fine where I am. The rest of dinner was tense. We talked about other things, surface things, but the weight of the conversation hung over the table like smoke. When the check came, Daniel grabbed it before I could even reach for my wallet. As we left, Victoria linked her arm through Daniel's and walked a few steps ahead of me, murmuring something I couldn't hear. In the car, the small talk was even smaller, and when they dropped me off at my building, Daniel's hug was perfunctory. Just think about it, Dad, he said through the open car window. Good night, Danny. I watched them drive away, the Audi's taillights disappearing down the street. Then I went upstairs to my apartment, the one bedroom with the worn carpet and the kitchen from the 70s. I made myself a cup of tea and sat by the window, looking out at the street below. 3 days later, Daniel called again. Hey, Dad. I wanted to apologize if we came on too strong at dinner. We really do just want to help. I know. Have you thought any more about what we discussed? Danny, I told you. I'm not interested. There was a pause. Then, okay. I respect that, but would you at least be willing to look at some places? Just to see what's out there? Victoria found a few that look really good. One of them is in Skokie. Really nice facility. They have a pool, a library, group activities. Daniel, just look. That's all I'm asking. If you hate them all, fine. But at least you'll have made an informed decision. I agreed to look, mostly to get him off the phone. He said he'd send me some links, which I never opened. But the calls kept coming. Daniel would check in, casually asking if I'd had a chance to review the materials. Victoria would text me articles about the benefits of senior communities, about the dangers of social isolation in elderly adults, about the statistics on falls and injuries in people over 65 living alone. Then, about 2 weeks after that dinner, they showed up at my building unannounced. It was a Saturday morning. I was in the alley behind the building, taking apart an old refrigerator that one of the tenants had left when they moved out. My hands were greasy, and I was wearing my coveralls again. I heard footsteps and looked up to see Daniel and Victoria standing there, both dressed like they were going to brunch, which they probably were. Dad, we need to talk, Daniel said. I stood up, wiping my hands on a rag. You couldn't call first? We've been calling. You're not listening. He looked at the refrigerator parts spread across the ground, and something in his expression shifted. Pity, maybe. Or embarrassment. Dad, this is ridiculous. You're 65 years old, taking apart trash in an alley. It's my job. It shouldn't be. Victoria stepped forward. She was holding a folder. Robert, we've tried to approach this gently, but you're not hearing us, so we're going to be direct. You need to sell your apartment and move into a community where you'll be safe and cared for. And I've told you I'm not doing that. We've already found a place, Daniel said. It's in Schaumburg. Beautiful facility. We put down a deposit. I stared at him. You did what? It's refundable if you decide within 30 days. But Dad, you need to see this place. They have everything. Meals included, housekeeping, transportation, medical staff on site. You wouldn't have to worry about anything. I don't worry about anything now. Victoria opened the folder. Inside were papers, forms, lots of them. We've also been in touch with an elder care attorney. Given your age and your financial situation, it makes sense to start planning for the future. We've drafted some documents that would allow Daniel to help manage your affairs, make decisions about your care if you're unable to. A power of attorney. Among other things, She flipped through the pages. There's also the matter of your apartment. We've had it appraised. With some minor updates, you could sell it for around $220,000. After closing costs and fees, you'd net about $200,000. The facility in Schaumburg costs $4,000 a month, which means your savings from the apartment would cover about 4 years. Maybe more if we invest it wisely. After that, we'd need to look at Medicaid options, but by then, you'd be established in the community, and transition would be easier. I looked at my son. He couldn't meet my eyes. You've had my apartment appraised. We're trying to help you plan, Victoria said. This isn't something you can ignore, Robert. None of us live forever. You need to be realistic about your limitations. My limitations? Yes. She closed the folder. You're a maintenance worker making poverty-level wages. You have no significant savings, no retirement plan beyond Social Security, and no family nearby except us. If something happens to you, if you get sick or injured, you'll have nothing. No safety net. We're offering you one. I took off my work gloves, folded them, tucked them into my pocket. Let me ask you something, Victoria. Why do you care? She blinked. Excuse me? Why do you care what happens to me? You've made it pretty clear over the years that you don't think much of me. The maintenance man. The blue-collar guy with grease under his fingernails. So, why this sudden concern? That's not fair, Daniel said. Isn't it? I looked at him. When's the last time you visited before that dinner? Not called, visited. When's the last time you invited me to your place? He didn't answer. We care because you're family, Victoria said, her voice tight. And because watching you struggle is painful. I'm not struggling. You're taking apart refrigerators in an alley. It's my job. It's beneath you. The words hung in the air. She realized what she'd said, tried to backtrack. I mean, it's beneath your potential. You're intelligent, Robert. You could have done more with your life. You still can, but not if you're working yourself to death, fixing other people's problems. I smiled. Couldn't help it. Fixing other people's problems. That's a good way to put it. Daniel stepped forward. Dad, please. Just look at the papers. Look at the facility. That's all we're asking. We're not trying to control your life. We're trying to make sure you have a life. I took the folder from Victoria, flipped through it. Power of attorney, healthcare proxy, quitclaim deed for the apartment. Already filled out with Daniel and Victoria's names as grantees. All I'd have to do is sign. When did you prepare these? I asked. Last week, Victoria said. We wanted to have everything ready so you wouldn't have to worry about the logistics. You just focus on adjusting to the idea, and we'll handle the rest. How thoughtful. We're trying to help, Daniel said again. I closed the folder, handed it back to Victoria. I need to think about this. Of course, she said. Take your time, but not too much time. The deposit on the facility is only good for 30 days. They left. I stood in the alley, surrounded by refrigerator parts and my own anger, trying to figure out what had just happened. My son, the boy I'd raised, the one I'd worked 16-hour days to put through college, was trying to take my apartment. He'd dressed it up in concern and paperwork and talk about my future, but underneath it all was the same calculation Victoria had just revealed. They thought I was broke. They thought I was helpless. They thought I had nothing except that apartment, and they'd decided it would be better off in their hands. I made 3 phone calls that afternoon. The first was to Margaret Chen, the attorney who'd handled my property acquisitions for the past 20 years. I told her what had happened. She was quiet for a moment, then said, "What do you want to do?" "I want Daniel to understand who I am." That could be complicated. I know. The second call was to James Rodriguez, my property manager. He handled the day-to-day operations of my buildings, collected rent, dealt with tenants, kept everything running while I played maintenance man at the building on West Madison. I asked him to pull up the lease for the office Daniel's consulting firm rented. 5th floor, corner suite, 3,000 square feet. They're current on rent? I asked. Paid through the end of the month. Their lease is up for renewal in January. Don't renew it. Robert, are you sure? Very sure. And James, I want you to give them notice. 60 days, as per the lease terms. The third call was to Daniel. He answered on the second ring. Dad, did you look at the papers? I did. I'm not signing them. Dad, but I want to have dinner again. You and Victoria. My treat this time. Okay. He sounded uncertain. When? Tomorrow night. There's a steakhouse in the Loop. Gibson's. You know it? Yeah, of course. 7 o'clock. I'll make a reservation. Dad, that place is expensive. I know. I'll see you tomorrow. I hung up before he could argue. Gibson's is the kind of place where the steaks are aged 40 days and cost $70 before you add sides. The wine list is a book. The clientele is tourists and expense accounts, and people celebrating something worth celebrating. I'd been there twice before, both times on business, back when I still took business meetings as myself instead of as Robert the maintenance man. I made a reservation for 3 under the name Morrison. Daniel and Victoria arrived 10 minutes late. They found me at the table, and I could see the confusion on their faces. I wasn't wearing coveralls. I was wearing a suit. Nothing flashy, just a navy suit I'd had tailored 5 years ago and rarely wore. White shirt, no tie. I looked like someone who belonged here. Dad, Daniel said, sit down. They sat. Victoria's eyes were scanning the room, taking in the white tablecloths, the suited waiters, the other diners in their expensive clothes. I didn't know you owned a suit, she said. There's a lot you don't know. A waiter appeared. I ordered a bottle of wine without looking at the price. Victoria's eyebrows went up. Daniel looked like he wanted to say something but couldn't figure out what. When the waiter left, I folded my hands on the table. I want to tell you a story, I said, about a kid from Bridgeport who grew up in a house with 5 brothers and a father who worked at the stockyards until his lungs gave out. This kid watched his mother clean houses to make ends meet. He watched his father die at 53 from breathing in chemicals for 30 years, and he decided he wasn't going to do that. He was going to find a different way. Daniel shifted in his seat. Dad, I know you had it hard growing up. Do you? Because I never told you most of it. I never wanted you to know how hard it was. I wanted you to have a different life, so I worked. I got a job in maintenance, learned every system in every building I worked in. I saved every dollar I could. And when I was 30, I bought my first building. A small one, 6 units, half of them empty. I fixed it up myself, rented it out, used the income to buy another one, then another. I spent my 20s and 30s working 2 jobs, sleeping 4 hours a night, learning real estate law and building codes and how to negotiate with banks. Victoria's expression had changed. She was paying attention now. By the time you were born, I continued, looking at Daniel, I owned 8 buildings. By the time you started college, I owned 23. Today, I own 41 commercial properties in Chicago. Office buildings, retail spaces, apartment complexes. My portfolio is worth about $84 million. The table was silent. Daniel's mouth had fallen open slightly. Victoria's face had gone pale. The building where I work? I said. The one on West Madison where you've seen me in my coveralls fixing boilers? I own it. I've owned it for 18 years. The reason I work there is because I like it. I like knowing how things work. I like fixing things. And I like staying grounded, staying connected to the kind of work I did when I started. It keeps me humble. Daniel couldn't finish the sentence. Rich. Yes, quite rich. I leaned back as the waiter returned with the wine, poured 3 glasses, and disappeared. I picked up mine. Now, let me tell you what else I did this week. I reviewed the lease for the office space your firm rents. 5th floor, corner suite, 3,000 square feet. Nice space, good natural light. You've been there, what, 3 years? Daniel nodded mutely. Your lease is up for renewal in January. I've instructed my property manager not to renew it. What? Victoria's voice was sharp. You have 60 days to vacate. I suggest you start looking for new office space immediately. The commercial market in the Loop is tight right now, so you might have trouble finding something comparable. And even if you do, the rent will probably be higher. Your current lease is below market rate. I kept it that way because I liked the idea of my son working in one of my buildings, even if he didn't know it. Dad, you can't do this. I already did. Why? Daniel's voice cracked. Because we wanted to help you? Help me? I set down my wine glass. Daniel, you had my apartment appraised. You prepared legal documents to take control of my finances. You put a deposit down on a facility without asking me. That's not help. That's a takeover. We thought you were poor, Victoria said. We thought you needed... You thought I was weak. You thought I was helpless. You thought I was an embarrassment. I looked at my son. Do you know how I paid for your college? You thought I'd scrimped and saved, maybe taken out loans. You never asked. You just assumed I'd managed it somehow, that I'd made sacrifices. You were right about the sacrifices. But I didn't scrape together tuition payments. I wrote checks. $230,000 over 4 years. I didn't blink. Daniel was shaking his head. I don't understand. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted you to earn your own success. I wanted you to work hard, to struggle a little, to understand the value of what you achieved. I didn't want you to coast on my money. I didn't want you to become entitled. Victoria flinched at the word. But somewhere along the way, I continued, I failed. Because you did become entitled, both of you. You got used to a lifestyle you can't quite afford. You got used to keeping up with your friends, the ones whose parents gave them down payments and trust funds. And when you looked at me, at your old man in his coveralls, you didn't see success. You saw a problem to solve, an asset to manage, a burden. That's not true, Daniel said, but his voice was weak. Isn't it? Victoria, you said it yourself. Watching me work is beneath my potential. Taking apart refrigerators, fixing toilets. You think that's failure. You think that's poverty. You have no idea what real poverty looks like. You have no idea what I came from or what I built. And because you never bothered to look deeper, you decided to take control. For my own good, the waiter appeared again, ready to take our orders. I ordered a ribeye. Daniel and Victoria ordered nothing. They said they weren't hungry. The waiter retreated, confused. So what happens now? Daniel asked. You kick us out of our office, and that's it? That's your revenge? It's not revenge. It's a consequence. You made decisions based on assumptions. Now you'll live with those decisions. You'll find new office space. It'll be expensive and inconvenient, and maybe you'll even lose some clients in the transition. That's business. That's life. You're punishing us for caring about you. I'm teaching you what you should have learned a long time ago. Don't make assumptions about people. Don't mistake humility for weakness. And don't try to take what isn't yours. Victoria stood up abruptly. I'm not sitting here listening to this. Then leave, I said. She grabbed her purse, looked at Daniel, waiting for him to follow. He stayed seated. Daniel, she said, go ahead. I'll meet you at the car. She left. Daniel and I sat in silence for a moment. He was staring at his wine glass, turning it slowly on the table. I didn't know, he said finally. I know. You should have told me. Maybe. But I wanted you to make your own way. I wanted you to be proud of what you earned. I am proud. He looked up at me, and his eyes were red. But I also feel like I don't know you. My whole life, I thought I knew who you were. And now you're telling me it was all... What? A lie? Not a lie. A choice. I chose to live modestly. I chose to work. I chose not to flaunt my wealth or use it to impress people. Those were my choices, and I don't regret them. But you're using it now, to punish me, to teach you. There's a difference. He shook his head. I don't know if I can forgive this. That's your choice. He stood up, threw his napkin on the table. Victoria was right. You're being cruel. Victoria, I said, is part of the problem. She's been pushing you to live beyond your means, to chase a lifestyle you can't sustain. She looked at me and saw someone to exploit, someone whose apartment could be sold to fund her ambitions. Maybe you should think about that. He didn't respond, just turned and walked away, leaving me alone at the table. The waiter came back, saw I was now sitting by myself, and asked if I still wanted the steak. I said yes. I ate it slowly, enjoying every bite. And when I was done, I paid the check with a credit card that had no limit and drove home in my rusty truck. The next 2 months were quiet. Daniel didn't call. I didn't call him. Through James, my property manager, I heard that his firm had found new office space in Evanston. More expensive rent, longer commute, less prestigious address. They were scrambling, taking on extra work to cover the increased overhead. A few of their associates had left for other firms. It was a rough transition. I kept working at the building on West Madison, fixed a leak in the roof, replaced a circuit breaker that kept tripping, helped one of the tenants move a heavy filing cabinet. Life went on. Then one morning in late December, I was in the basement checking the boiler when I heard footsteps on the stairs. I turned to see Daniel standing there in jeans and a winter coat, his hands in his pockets. "Hey, Dad." "Danny." He looked around the basement, at the pipes and the concrete walls and the ancient boiler that I'd coaxed back to life more times than I could count. "I used to help you with this stuff when I was a kid, remember? You'd hand me tools. You were terrible at it." He smiled, just a little. "Yeah." We stood there in silence. Then he said, "I got fired." "What?" "Not officially. They called it a mutual decision to pursue other opportunities. But I got fired. The move to Evanston was expensive, we lost some clients, and I was one of the newer partners. When they needed to cut costs, I was the obvious choice." "I'm sorry." "Are you?" I thought about it. "Yes. I didn't want this for you." Victoria left me. I didn't say anything. She said I should have fought you. She said I should have sued you for kicking us out of the building, that there had to be some kind of legal recourse. But I didn't want to fight you. I wanted to understand why you did it. And when I couldn't give her an answer she liked, she decided I was weak. We're getting divorced. "Denny, Don't apologize. You were right about her. I knew it somewhere, but I didn't want to admit it. She wanted a lifestyle, and I was the means to that lifestyle. When I couldn't provide it anymore, I wasn't useful." He sat down on a step, looking exhausted. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about assumptions, about entitlement. And you were right. I looked at you and saw someone who needed my help, someone who couldn't take care of himself. I never asked if you wanted help. I just decided you needed it and proceeded accordingly. That was arrogant." "It was. I'm sorry." I sat down next to him on the step. "I'm sorry, too, for not telling you the truth sooner, for letting you think I was something I wasn't. I thought I was teaching you values, but maybe I was just teaching you to look down on the kind of work I do. The kind of work I came from. I don't look down on it." "You did. You called it beneath me." Victoria said that. "Not me." "You didn't disagree." He was quiet. Then, "No, I didn't." We sat there in the basement, listening to the boiler rumble. Finally, Daniel said, "What do I do now?" "What do you want to do?" "I don't know. Find another job, I guess. Figure out my life. Start over. You could work for me." He looked at me. "What?" "I need someone to help manage the properties. James is good, but he's overwhelmed. You have business experience. You're smart. You're organized. You could learn the rest." "You want me to work in real estate?" "I want you to learn what I do. Learn how I built this. Learn the buildings, the tenants, the work that goes into keeping everything running. Not from an office, not from a distance. From the ground up. You'd start by helping me. Maintenance work, repairs, getting your hands dirty. You want me to be a maintenance worker. I want you to understand what it takes. If you can do that, if you can humble yourself enough to start at the bottom, then maybe in a few years you'll be ready to help me run the company. And maybe someday it'll be yours. But only if you earn it." Daniel was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "When do I start?" "Monday, 7 a.m. Wear clothes you don't mind ruining." He nodded, stood up, extended his hand. I shook it. "Thanks, Dad." "Don't thank me yet. Wait until you've spent a week fixing toilets." He laughed, and it was the first genuine laugh I'd heard from him in years. He started the following Monday, showed up in old jeans and a sweatshirt, ready to work. I handed him a toolbox and took him up to the 3rd floor, where a tenant had called about a dripping faucet. He watched as I took apart the fixture, found the worn washer, replaced it, and put everything back together. Then I handed him the wrench. Now you do the one in the bathroom. He did. It took him 3 times as long as it should have, and he dropped the wrench twice, but he did it. Over the next few weeks, I taught him everything I knew. How to read a circuit breaker panel, how to bleed air from radiators, how to patch drywall, how to snake a drain, how to talk to tenants who were upset about noise or temperature or the smell from the restaurant downstairs. He worked hard. Some days I could see the frustration in his face, the awareness that he was 34 years old with a degree from Northwestern and he was elbow deep in a backed-up sink. But he didn't complain. He just kept working. In the evenings, I started teaching him the business side. We'd sit in my apartment, the one he'd wanted me to sell, and I'd show him the spreadsheets. The rent rolls, the expense reports, the debt service schedules, the capital improvements budget. I showed him how to analyze a potential acquisition, how to negotiate with contractors, how to deal with problem tenants and late payments, and all the 1,000 small crises that come with managing 41 properties. He asked good questions. He paid attention. And slowly, I watched him change. The arrogance faded. The entitlement wore away. He started to understand what it meant to build something from nothing, to work for it, to take pride in the work itself and not just the paycheck. 3 months later, I promoted him, made him assistant property manager. He got a small office in one of my buildings, not the one on West Madison. I kept that one for myself. He still spent half his time doing maintenance work, learning the systems, but now he also handled tenant relations, coordinated repairs, reviewed contracts. James worked with him, taught him, and told me privately that Daniel had potential. 6 months after that, on a warm day in June, Daniel and I were on the roof of the building on West Madison, checking the HVAC units. The view from up there is something else. You can see the whole city, the grid of streets, the lake in the distance, the mix of old buildings and new ones, the constant change and renewal that is Chicago. Daniel sat on the edge of the roof, feet dangling over the side. I never asked you why you kept working as a maintenance man, even after you got rich. Why not just hire someone and sit in an office? I sat next to him. Because I like fixing things, and because it reminds me where I started. It's easy to forget, when you have money, what it was like to not have it. Easy to lose perspective. This keeps me grounded. Do you ever regret it, not telling me sooner? Sometimes, but I think it worked out the way it was supposed to. You needed to learn those lessons, and you did. He nodded. I was angry at you for a long time. I know. I'm not anymore. I know that too. We sat there in silence, watching the city move below us. Then Daniel said, I want to show you something. He pulled out his phone, opened an app, showed me a bank account. I've been saving. Every paycheck, 20% goes into this account. No exceptions. I have $8,000 saved so far. It's not much, but it's mine. I earned it. I looked at the number on the screen. That's good, Danny. I'm proud of you. I want to buy a building, a small one. Fix it up, rent it out, like you did. You want to be a landlord? I want to build something, like you did. I don't want to just manage your properties. I want to have my own. I want to earn it. I put my arm around his shoulders. Then let's start looking. We did. Over the next few months, we looked at dozens of properties, small apartment buildings, mostly the kind I'd started with. Daniel learned how to evaluate them, how to calculate cap rates and cash-on-cash returns, how to spot problems that would cost more to fix than they were worth. He saved more money. He studied. And finally, in October, almost exactly a year after that dinner at Gibson's, he bought his first building, 6 units in Albany Park. Needed work, but nothing that couldn't be fixed. He paid $280,000 for it, put down $56,000, took out a mortgage for the rest. He called me the day the deal closed. I did it, Dad. I own a building. Congratulations. How does it feel? Terrifying. Exciting. Both. That's about right. He spent the next 3 months fixing it up. I helped him with some of the work, taught him things I hadn't covered yet. How to tile a bathroom, how to refinish hardwood floors, how to install a new furnace. We worked side by side, and it reminded me of when he was a kid, handing me tools in the basement, asking questions about how things worked. By January, all 6 units were rented. Daniel's building was cash flowing, covering the mortgage and expenses with a little left over. He was a landlord, a property owner. He'd built something. We had dinner that night, just the two of us, at a small Italian place in his neighborhood. Nothing fancy. Red checkered tablecloths and a menu written on a chalkboard. He ordered wine, the house red, and we toasted to his success. "You know what the funny thing is?" he said. "A year ago, I would have been embarrassed to be here. This place isn't fancy enough. The wine isn't expensive enough. But now I like it. It's real. It's honest. You've changed." "I had to." "You made sure of it." "No. You made sure of it. I just gave you the opportunity." He smiled. "I'm glad you kicked me out of that office." "Are you?" "Yes. I needed it. I needed to fail. I needed to start over. If you hadn't done that, I'd still be the same entitled asshole I was before. Still married to Victoria, still chasing a lifestyle I couldn't afford, still looking at you and seeing someone to pity instead of someone to respect. I never wanted you to pity me. I know. And I don't. Not anymore. Now I see what you built. I see who you are. And I want to be like that. I want to build something that matters. Something real. Not just make money, but make something." I raised my glass. To building something. To building something. We drank. And for the first time in a year, I felt like I had my son back. Not the boy I'd raised, but a man I respected. A man who'd learned the lessons I'd tried to teach him the hard way, but he'd learned them nonetheless. We finished our dinner and walked outside into the cold January night. Daniel's truck was parked on the street, a used Ford he'd bought after selling the Audi. He'd needed the cash for the building down payment. He didn't seem to miss the Audi at all. "Dad," he said as we reached his truck, "I never thanked you. For everything. For putting me through school. For teaching me this past year. For not giving up on me. You're my son. I'll never give up on you." He hugged me. A real hug. Not the perfunctory kind from before. Then he got in his truck and drove away, and I stood on the sidewalk watching until his taillights disappeared. I walked back to my own truck, the 2003 F-150 with the rust and the dent and the AM radio. Started it up, listened to the engine rattle for a moment before it settled into its usual rumble. Drove home through the quiet streets of Chicago. Past the buildings I owned and the buildings I didn't. Past the neighborhoods I'd worked in and the ones where I'd grown up. I thought about my father, who died at 53 with nothing to show for his life but worn-out lungs and a family that loved him. I thought about the choice I'd made, to build something different, to create something that would last. And I thought about my son, who was just beginning to understand what it meant to build, to work, to earn something real. He had a long way to go, but he'd started, and that was enough. I parked my truck behind my building, the modest one-bedroom in Rogers Park that Daniel had wanted me to sell. Went upstairs, made myself a cup of tea, and sat by the window looking out at the street. Somewhere in the city, in a 6-unit building in Albany Park, my son was probably doing the same thing, looking at what he'd built, planning what came next, learning what I'd spent a lifetime learning, that wealth isn't about the money, it's about the work. It's about what you build and who you become in the building of it. I'd taught him that, finally. It had taken longer than I'd hoped, cost more than I'd wanted, but I'd taught him. And now, maybe, he could build something of his own, something that would last. I finished my tea and went to bed. Tomorrow, I'd be back in my coveralls, back in the basement of the building on West Madison, fixing whatever needed fixing. Because that's what I do. That's who I am. Not Robert the maintenance man. Not Robert the millionaire. Just Robert. The guy who builds things. The guy who fixes things. The guy who knows the value of honest work. And now my son knows it too.